Alex stared dejectedly out the window of his luxurious apartment. He achieved everything he dreamt of and even more, but he had no friends because there can be no friends in business. He was alone. His parents died almost 10 years ago. He was not married. At 40, he had no person to hug. The phone on the table rang. Yes. Mr. Wright, you have a deal at 3 o'clock. Can you come? Yes, I'll come. Of course, he will be on this deal. A week ago, after a painful treatment, when he recovered a little, the doctor called him and said, Alex, unfortunately, the treatment didn't work. You need to try another direction. How? And why did I suffer these 2 months then? Unfortunately, it happens. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 courses to figure out which one is the most effective. No, I don't want to participate in your experiments. He slammed the phone on the table and it shattered. A few days later, he put his business up for sale. He decided that he would spend the time he had left traveling in resorts, and he would leave to die in some mountain village. He himself didn't know why in a mountain village. The doctor said 3 months, maybe a little more, unless a miracle happens. And a miracle can happen only in one case, if he agrees to a new treatment, and it has not yet been fully studied. There is progress. This treatment helps people, but not all and not at all stages. He then asked the doctor, what are the chances that it will help me? I'll tell you honestly, the chances are very small, because as I said, the treatment has not been fully tested. And why do I need it? To once again hope and then lose it? Not. Yesterday, he walked around the city on foot and was glad that he could still do it and was not lying on a hospital bed. He stopped at the church and some old woman immediately approached him. Help me. He handed her some banknotes. Old woman looked at him in surprise. No one has ever given her that much money. When he was about to leave, old woman took him by the sleeve. When you do good deeds, dying is not so scary because many people are grateful to you. He left and the words of the old woman still sounded in his head. He decided that when he got home, he would pack all his warm clothes and take them to the homeless shelter. Once, he was one of the sponsors who created the shelter. People who had something bad happen in their lives could be there. Not homeless people chose their own path, but those who needed help. Someone was deceived with an apartment. Someone ran away from her husband. Someone else had some other reason, and this place was never empty. Alex looked at the time. More than 4 hours remained before the meeting, so he decided to lie down. He didn't sleep well tonight. He sat down on the couch and immediately fell asleep. He probably fell asleep because suddenly the events of the past about 10 years ago stood before his eyes. 10 years ago, he met a woman named Wendy. Soon, he was ready to make her an offer of marriage. Wendy worked as a nurse and lived with her mother. In general, she was an ordinary woman. But she told him that she only wanted his money, but he laughed in her face. What money? Wendy is a holy woman. But it turned out that he was very wrong about this. On the day when he was going to propose to her, she asked him for a large sum of money. He then replied that he would think about it and left her. He left, never to return. She called him the next day only once. He didn't answer the phone and she didn't try to contact him again. Perhaps he remembered for so long only Wendy of all the women he had, and he had a lot of them. He loved her. Alex woke up an hour later. He felt good. If he didn't know that he was sick, he would have not believed anyone. And the only change in the body was that he often required rest. During the day, a man could sleep 3 or 4 times. In the evening, after Alex returned from the meeting, he began to pack his things. Mrs. Hardy peeked into the room. Alex, I'm here. Mrs. Hardy, I told you not to come here again. I don't want you to starve to death. Alex smiled. The kind woman had been his housekeeper for more than 5 years. She immediately began to treat him with maternal care. She fought with him for a long time so that he would have breakfast in the morning. They even fought. Alex told her that he decides what to do, not her. But of course, Mrs. Hardy won, and he obediently began to eat porridge, scrambled eggs, and everything that was given to him in the morning. She was right. Alex felt better, and he was not tired, as if he had recharged since the morning. And what are you doing? I decided to take some things to the shelter. This is good, but I don't understand. Will you take all your things there? And what will you wear in winter? In winter, I won't need anything anymore. Mrs. Hardy pretended that she didn't hear his words because she replied, That's right, you buy yourself new clothes. She went into the room and began to help Alex pack his things. It took them an hour to do this. Then they had dinner for another hour, and Alex felt that he was dead tired. He decided to take things in the morning. and now he's gone to bed. In the morning, he was greeted at the shelter almost with hugs. "Mr. Wright, where have you been? We haven't seen you for a long time." "Mr. Heyman, I have a lot to do. By the way, you need to send someone to unload the car. I brought you things and food." "Of course we will do it now. Come to my office, where we will drink tea." They sat, talked, and drank tea. There was a knock on the door. "Mr. Heyman, can I come in?" "Come on, Paul, we have guests." A young man entered the office. He worked in the shelter as a lawyer. He was paid a salary from sponsorship money, and he helped those who were in a difficult situation. He greeted Alex and turned to the director. "I came about the new girl. Seems like a real crime there." Alex raised an eyebrow in surprise, and the director hurried to explain. "Recently, a woman came to us. Good and positive, but her husband repeatedly beat her, and now she ran away from him, and he doesn't give her the child, and besides, he burned their documents." "What are the police doing?" "Nothing, he works for the police." "But this is wrong." "This woman has nothing. Everything in the family is registered to the husband. He immediately sued for the deprivation of her parental rights, and he found false witnesses who testified that she was a bad mother. Now we are looking for anything that can help us, and she has no relatives. She has no one who could help her." Alex suddenly thought that he had a very large and beautiful apartment. Is this woman really good, and does she really need help? Yes, she once worked as a nurse, but then her husband ordered her to quit. It so happened that at first, he fenced her off from everything, and then he began to mock her. "Can I talk to her? I have an idea." "Of course. Paul, please invite Wendy to join us." Wendy was a nurse? What a coincidence. But there was no coincidence, because it was the same Wendy with whom he was in love. Alex sank into a chair. She has lost a lot of weight and her eyes are completely red. Apparently she cries a lot. "Hello, Mr. Heyman. Do you have any news?" "One person wants to talk to you." She turned around and froze. "Alex?" Alex turned to the surprised director. "Can you leave us? It turns out we know each other." Mr. Heyman was surprised by this fact, but he was also delighted. He felt genuinely sorry for this woman. She told him about her life, in which there was little good. Her mom died. Wendy couldn't find money for her treatment. At that time, Wendy was pregnant, but she refused to talk about the father of her child. She wanted to finish everything, but the same policeman saved her. He saved her from depression. True, he demanded in return that Wendy marry him. Her husband was 22 years older than her. Alex was silent for a long time, then said, "I have only one question for you. Why did you ask for money then?" Wendy looked up at him. "My mother was sick. I urgently needed money for her treatment." "Is your mom recovered?" Wendy shook her head as a tear rolled down her cheek. "No, I didn't find the money." Alex suddenly realized what a bastard he was. "Why didn't you explain to me why you needed the money?" She shrugged. "You ran away right away. Then I tried to call you. But that is already in the past. What did you want to talk about?" "I want to help you." "I don't really want to accept your help, but I have to do it. Not for me, but for the sake of my son, who is also your son." He almost lost consciousness. "What did you say?" "What you heard. A week after you went missing, I found out I was pregnant. Naturally, I didn't look for you to tell the good news. You would think that I want money from you." He was silent. Of course, she was absolutely right about everything, and there was no excuse for him, because that is exactly what he would have thought. An hour later, everyone who could help arrived at the shelter. Alex called the best lawyer and also called an acquaintance who was indebted to him, and at the same time was a friend of the chief of police. The thought that he had a son gave him strength. He also realized that his love for Wendy had not disappeared. He just convinced himself that love is no more. He left the shelter in the afternoon. Wendy saw him off. "Alex, I heard that you have health problems." He looked at her cheerfully. "Yes, I have problems, but now I know that I am not alone. I know to whom I will leave my apartment and money. Don't you have any chance?" Tears streamed down the woman's cheeks again. "How to say to you? The doctors offered me one experimental treatment, but there are also few chances." "Did you refuse this treatment?" "Yes, I don't see the point in suffering. For what or who? I repeat that the chance is very small. Forget it." "You have to do this for your son, for us. You are not alone. We really need you." He looked at her carefully, said nothing, and got into the car. And when he left the shelter, he took out his phone and called the doctor. "This is Alex. I agreed to try. Now I have a meaning in this life. A year has passed. Wendy sat in Alex's luxurious apartment and talked to her son. "Max, why are you so nervous?" "Mom, do you think Dad will agree to come with me tomorrow? I have such important competitions." "Max, he's only being discharged from the hospital. We don't know how he feels yet." "Mom, I understand, but Dad was very cheerful on the phone." Literally 2 months ago, they heard from the doctor what they had been waiting for so long. Everything worked out. Now a good rehabilitation and you can return to normal life. Alex was exhausted from the heavy treatments. He looked at the doctor in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "There is nowhere more serious. Of course, you still have a long rehabilitation ahead of you, but I can already say now that we won." He didn't understand why his eyes were suddenly so hot. Yes, for the first time in his adult life, he cried. When he calmed down, he was able to call Wendy. "We won!" He listened with a smile as Wendy, Max, and Mrs. Hardy cheered at the other end of the line. This is his family, and they are happy for him. Max saw his father first. "Dad!" The plane had landed 15 minutes ago, and Max was jumping up and down in anticipation. He rushed to Alex, who hugged him, and then Wendy came up to him. She wrapped her arms around him with a sigh. "Hi, Alex." Alex hugged the two of them and even closed his eyes at how good he felt. He is so happy now that words can't express it. He looked at Max. "Dad, I have a competition tomorrow. Will you come?" "Max!" Wendy looked sternly at her son, and he lowered his head guiltily, and Alex smiled. "Don't yell at the child. Son, of course I'll come. And I will even scream and cheer for you. And now, let's go home. I got very hungry. I'm so fed up with this hospital food. I want homemade food." Wendy laughed. "Mrs. Hardy has been cooking in the kitchen since morning. She's going to fatten you up after the hospital, and she won't even let us into the kitchen." And they went to the exit, hugging tightly.